Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Licensing Committee meeting. It's going to be virtual Microsoft Teams meeting because of the coronavirus. So we'll make a start. Any apologies, Donna?
I've not received any apologies. Paul may have.
I've been told that the chair is going. The vice chair is going to be Stephanie Brookfield is going to be late. She's going to be on at 6:15, but she is joining us.
The other is Mahfouz Hussain. They have a bereavement, so I doubt if he's going to attend today. Councillor Mahfouz Hussain. So, any other apologies?
Not that I know of.
Okay, thank you very much.
No, but Pastor, could you send our condolences to him, please, and our best wishes?
Okay, will do, Paul. Thank you. Declaration for interest. Any got a declaration of a licensing committee? Anybody?
No.
No. Okay, thank you. Minutes of the previous meeting. Have you all read it?
Yes.
The meeting was held on 29th of October 2019. It's been a long time, but I'm sure most of you or all of you have read the minutes and agree with the minutes. Yeah?
Yes.
Okay. So the next one is agenda number 4, licensing committee, page 8 to 58. So it's got Department of Transport statutory taxis, private and hire vehicle standards, policies for statutory taxi and private hire vehicle standards, and English language requirements guidance. So I'm sure you all read it. Is there anything you want to raise or you're not happy about? No?
Pardon, it's for you. Is this just guidance or is it something that we're going to adopt?
Donna?
Chair, yeah, it's statutory guidance, but because it's national, we are expected to comply with this guidance unless we've got some really explicit reasons not to, to move away from this guidance. They're expecting every local authority to adopt this guidance and work with it.
Okay, thank you. Will that be retrospective? Because obviously that's going to cause some issues for current license holders.
Well, I think what we were obviously the English language issue. I don't think we'd do that retrospective. I think if perhaps there's a problem where a driver comes before you and you can see that there are some language barriers, then maybe we would put that on, the driver would have to go through some training for the English language side. We could revisit. We could revisit criminal records, but most, as I say, the criminal record things are very close to what we have in already. So I don't think we'd go back there. We do have the opportunity to review any licenses if we wish, because it is a new standard. But with there or thereabouts, apart from the English language, the CCTV, and then these extra DBS standards for operators, vehicle compliance. Yes.
Who would do the English language assessment?
I think, well, we've been obviously because of lockdown, we've struggled to get
to
Blackburn College, but I think potentially we would ask Blackburn College if they could provide something. Some may already have certificates, so maybe we'd accept them.
Should we put that in our policy to say that if they didn't have certificates, we would approach Blackburn College?
I think, we need to consult. This is just introducing all the standards to you, and we do need to do a full consultation after what members decide tonight. But yeah, I mean, whether there's other local providers that could provide this, you know, qualification. I mean, it's generally like a GCSE, really.
Yeah.
But obviously the government, especially with all things that have gone wrong in the taxi world nationally, do feel that this is very important that drivers are aware of, you know, can communicate with passengers, are fully aware of all the obligations and policies that they must abide by, and that they can see any safeguarding issues. So they do see it as the way forward, that every driver should be competent.
Yeah.
But yeah, there may be other providers that would come in, as long as they provide us with some sort of certificate to say that they've reached this standard.
That's
would
what I
accept
was
it.
aiming
Yeah.
for, that we need a certificate or proof.
Yeah.
Thank you, Donna.
Okay.
Chair. So could I sorry, just make a point. The
Yes, Denise.
Donna's attached to the report the Transport for London, their standards that drivers in London are expected to meet, and it's very clear in there that anybody that has had been educated in secondary school in the UK, they will be, you know, automatically they will meet that standard of English if they've passed any exams really in English language. So I think for the vast majority of driver applicants, then we should be okay, shouldn't we? It should be a relatively small number that may struggle with this. So.
Okay, thank you. Someone else wanted to speak? TF? Tassie?
Hi everyone. Yeah, I think I agree with Donna, but one of the concerns when I was on licensing a few years ago was that several of the guys who used to come in needed interpreters, and that did used to leave me questioning and wondering that if they needed interpreters in a meeting which we were really carefully managing to ensure they understood everything we were saying and we understood what they wanted to put across to us, if they were still struggling to understand in that environment, then how much must they struggle within a car with somebody who they literally seen for just a very short space of time, who could be in whatever kind of mood. And I've been a private hire operator and a driver, so I know how volatile that situation can get. However, on the other side of it, I was also concerned that on whether we should put everybody through it, or whether, like Donna just said, if they come up before us, should it be assessed at that point? But what if somebody doesn't have the need to come up in front of us at the application time? How do we then, unless I'm misunderstanding what Donna said, you know, there has to be some basis of English, but there also then they have to have some understanding to pass the test and understand it in the first place. And is that a marker to say, well, for them to be able to understand and pass the test in the first place, they must have that basic requirement to achieve that? Or do we want to then at that point pick up on the fact that to say, well, no, actually, like you just said, maybe use a guidance to say if they've had exams or if they've been in a secondary school, fine. Anybody else outside of that maybe should put through it. And secondly, also, unless I missed it, I logged on a little bit late, so I apologise. Who would bear the cost for the for this if they had to go for a you know, to the college or whatever? Because you will then get drivers saying, well, why is it costing me £50 more than the driver who sat next to me who hasn't had to sit it?
Can I speak, Chair?
Yes, Donna. I
think obviously the drivers would have to bear the cost. That's my opinion. It would be from all new applicants moving forward. So it's a new standard, so all the new drivers would have to bear this cost. And then the other ones who want that, I don't feel we could put it on all our existing drivers. I think we would struggle with that.
Yeah.
Because they've been determined that they're fit to hold a license. They have passed the knowledge test. So they've.
No, you can't.
No, I think it's only if the language does cause some problems in the future that perhaps we would say
Yeah.
you need to pay to go through some more training.
Yeah. That's
Chair,
fine.
I agree with Donna.
Okay.
We should not look at the past
Yeah.
unless there's a need,
Yeah.
but start from
Yeah.
virtually now.
Okay. Denise, did you want to speak?
Yes, Chair.
Yes, go on.
Hi, good evening, everybody. I agree with Taz that a lot of committees are held and we have interpreters and language barriers, and it's gone for many years. But if we're bringing in a new policy that there's a standard, then would it be discriminating against new drivers if we didn't put it as an equal playing field? It's like Taz says, you could have the new drivers who's had to have English lessons and it's costing £50, where you've got a driver who's been driving for years, hasn't had to pay that £50, but yet when there's a problem, they come in front of us and need an interpreter. So there's very foggy ground here, isn't there? Because there's a high percentage that do come and language is a barrier. And I would suggest, Chair, that if we're going to set a policy, we need to set a standard. And if we set a standard, then everybody should meet that standard. And that would bring our taxi fleet, our taxi drivers, up to a capability point that would be acceptable for our residents and for those people who hire those taxis. That's just a point of thought.
Thank you very much, Denise. Yeah, I think we need to look at that. Brian wants to come in as well. Brian?
Thank you, Chair. I hope we can hear me okay.
Yes, we can.
I'm jumping down the pages a fair bit, so
Yeah.
please forgive me for that. But I've come to the use of CCTV within taxis.
Yeah.
I can think of a few cases we've heard lately and reviews we've had where the use of CCTV in a taxi would have been most useful to the committee to actually get to the truth, because we had conflicting evidence on one side and the other.
Yeah.
So do we plan to install CCTV in all public hire and taxis? And also it mentions on here about the use of audio, which again will be most useful, but it needs to be able to be turned on and off at both the taxi drivers wish and the passengers. Could please have some explanations of this from my officers, please?
Thank you very much, Brian. Yeah, I think Donna will.
Currently, we do allow CCTV in taxis, but it's on a voluntary basis, and we've got maybe a handful of drivers that have CCTV. To go for a full policy, we'd need to make it mandatory that they have CCTV in the vehicles. We have to, for the Information Commissioner, we do have to actually say that there's a definite need for it. So these complaints, like you say, where we could define who's telling the truth and who's not, there's a need. There's many drivers that have people running off without paying. It would prevent that. For safety and everything all round, CCTV is an excellent idea. It would have to be a system that would be owned, whether like the council or the data protection managers of it. So we couldn't just say they can spend £200 and have any sort of CCTV in the vehicle. It would have to be a proper system that we could control. It would be with the audio. Audio wouldn't be on unless the driver felt in jeopardy, so he could switch it on, or the passenger felt in jeopardy. So either party could set the audio into action. again, the camera system would automatically come on when the engine is switched on, but the driver would have the facility to turn it off when he's driving the vehicle for private reasons. So that he would have to actually physically turn it off. So the system would perhaps be in the boot. So if he's taking his family somewhere, he'd be able to turn that system off for that journey. But it would automatically come back on his next journey. So either way, if the driver, has intentions and he turns the camera off, then it probably still in disputes between the driver and passengers. You're leaning towards the passenger story if the driver is intentionally turned that camera on. Obviously that'd be very probably wouldn't happen wouldn't happen at all, hopefully, but if there was a driver that had some wrong intentions and he turned the camera off for that reason, there's inference because he's turned it off that there's something wrong with the driver. There's only currently one authority in Lancashire that's got the mandatory scheme, and that's Rosendale. Others, like other authorities like us, you can have CCTV, but they've not made it mandatory. Mm-hmm. The biggest thing would be the cost to the drivers. I think, as I say, we're probably looking at £500 a camera to each driver. So that's something that we would have to consider. Yeah, yes, it would be lovely to have it, but would the drivers be able to afford it? I don't know. Okay.
Well, like you said,
ask a supplementary question, please, Chair.
Just 1 second, Brian, please. I'll give you a chance to ask question. What Donna has just said, that we need to look into it, and then obviously the government guidelines will be presented at the next lessons committee, and then we'll start consultation, and then we look, once we got a consultation, then we can decide where we're going to get the money and what's the perception of the drivers and the community. So we'll look into it. Yes, Brian, go on.
Yeah, the question I was going to ask was, who will be the data protection regulator?
Donna?
Well, the Information Commission, Information Commission officer. That's the actual regulator. As I say, I think we would own it. So if there was any complaints or issues, we would be the ones that have to access the images.
Okay.
I would imagine potentially the police as well could be another agency that could look, have the powers to look at the images, but the drivers wouldn't be able to look at the images. It would be us or the police.
Okay. Tassie?
Yeah, it's just a comment really. I don't understand the purpose behind allowing drivers to turn off the cameras if they were actually on a job, and I don't understand why they wouldn't want to have it on if it's for their safety and the safety of the passenger at all times anyway. Personally, having been there again, and I think we've got a few other members who are taxi drivers or private hire drivers.
Yeah.
These situations can turn on you within seconds. It can be an argument with a couple on the back seat, and for no apparent reason whatsoever, next thing you're being throttled by the guy because he doesn't want to take it out on the missus. I've had this personally. So you don't get time to think about these things and why you'd want to have your camera off. And secondly, again, if somebody had it off and something did happen, the minefield in why did you have it off and all the rest of it, it's just left to all these questions. Whereas if it was mandatory that the camera must be on if you are on a paid job, full stop, that eradicates all of that. And again, the purpose of these are, and if you had something up in the card to say you are being recorded on CCTV for your safety as well as mine, that one straight away controls behaviour within the vehicle. And secondly, if you're doing nothing wrong and you've no bad intentions as a driver or a passenger, you should never take issue with it.
it would be that it should be on whilst working. The option to turn it off is when they're not working.
I thought not working.
Yeah, it was a drive. I was, referring to a driver with a bad intention, potentially with switching it off.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that if it was mandatory that it was on at all times, and then you could prove he was on a job, but for some reason he switched it off, that answers that itself.
It does, but I think it's the Information Commission officer that have said the right to a private life. It has to be when.
No, I'm fine with the private life. I'm saying if he was on a job and for some reason he turned it off during that job because he had a bad intention, then that answers itself, doesn't it?
It does. It does.
Rather than,
Thank you, Jesse. Jim Casey, did you want to come in?
Yeah, it's regarding the I mean, obviously we can have a debate all day about CCTV. Obviously, if it's on, you've nothing to hide. You could go down that route. If you're making a specific check when you're doing licensing checks or when you're pulling cabs over, if they've got the vehicle CCTV switched off, then obviously you can ask the question then. So whether you're making actually a specific offence for not having your CCTV on when there's a complaint or when you're doing a check, that's something we can look at going forward. My other concern is obviously the standards have increased. So I'll just bring up one. So the use of a mobile phone whilst driving. So we've had that obviously in committee where people have come in, or when you're giving out new licenses, that's gone from 1 year now to 5 years. So for 5 years, you couldn't give somebody a taxi license. So what I'm talking about retrospective, obviously, we will be declining drivers for a license, for a taxi license, because they've got that specific offence. Yet we would probably have drivers currently now that have got that and wouldn't have a license. So if it is being seen retrospectively on that, where do we go with that?
Thank you, Jimmy. Jonna?
It's down to yourselves. How far back do we go? Do we have a clean start with a new policy, or do we review all our licenses? Potentially, I would think it will be for serious offences, violence and sexual offences. Though I have to say, I think you've probably taken those off the road anyway. But whether we go down to using a mobile phone, it would be a decision for yourselves.
Okay, just to come back on that, right? So I'm happy then that the fact we can make that decision to say it starts now. Anybody that's previous to that it is what it is. It's just a clean sweep, and it's for everyone going forward. So we have got that within our gift.
Yes, got that in our gift. Yeah.
Well, I'm comfortable with that then.
Thank you very much. Any comments or anything?
Yeah, I have on the mobile one. I mean, it's increasing in 1 to 5 years. I find it really not very good, actually. I mean, when you say mobile, I mean, are you gonna get somebody to be banned for 5 years? Yeah, because if somebody were using a mobile, it doesn't happen in a normal driving.
Donna?
But it's gone up to 6 points. It's down as a major traffic offence. So it's caused so many accidents nationally. That's why it's become a major traffic offence. So do you want somebody that takes that risk? They're professional drivers. So the message will go out. And why would Blackburn move away if the rest of the authorities are taking on this?
Is this the national guidelines that they want us to extend from 1 year to 5 years? Is it our decision what we want to do?
You would have to have they are guidelines. The term is guidelines. So yeah, you can consider each case on individual merit, but that's the guideline that the government want you to go with.
So can I ask another question? So basically we can say between 1 and 5 years. You can't just put a 5 years ban on that. So that means anybody using a 4 mile, you're not looking at the circumstances, you're just banning for 5 years. If you put it between 1 to 5 years, that's a different story altogether, and depends on each circumstances. Don't mind that. That isn't a problem, because that's up to the members' decision then, isn't it?
Yeah, but it doesn't actually say between 1 and 5. The standard will be 5. But if you want to, you know, somebody's before you for using a mobile phone whilst carrying passengers, the standard is 5. If you want to reduce it, you're going to have to give your reasons why you want to reduce it when you're making that decision. But it's there, yeah. You can do that. You haven't to be chained by the policy. You can depart from the policy as long as you've got really good reasons to depart from the policy.
No, I just for clarity, I want something putting in there which says up to 5 years, up to 7 years, up to 10 years, up to this, yeah? Because we don't want to put 5 years in there, then you got different people coming in and saying it's 5 years, that's it. It got to be something in there which says up to 5 years. Then it's a member's decision looking at the circumstances.
Donna?
I'd like to ask Julie, to be honest, for a bit of advice on that. Can you change that standard?
No, I think you've got to put the standard there, but you're right. Every case is on its merits, and you are not bound. So you can depart from the policy, but like Donna said, you've got to give very clear reasons why you've departed. Yeah, so you need to have it there as the policy, and then explain why you've departed from that policy.
I have no problem with that, but what I'm saying that it needs to be somewhere black and white. It says up to 5 years, yeah? Then if we make a decision 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, yeah, that's entirely up to the committee who's making a decision, that they got to have a right reasons why they're giving 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, or 4 year, or 5 years. But I think we need to be very, very clear and say, right, 0 to 5 years. 0 to this year's, 0 to this year's, because that is the clarification I am not sure about. You can't just put a figure in there and then ask us to have a look at the circumstances. You can't do that.
I think if you have the 5 years, you're telling the driver that's the standard.
Yeah.
You can depart from that standard. There's nothing wrong with you going less than that or granting them the license. But if you put in you put in discretion, and they don't know where they are with up to, they know where they are. They just see 5 years in black and white.
Okay, Mahfouz. Up to 5 years is black and white as well.
It isn't. Up to is not black and white. 5 years is black and white.
No, then you've given us instructions that it's up to our decision. We can go below that, but we need to see something in writing to the elected members. People understand, yes, we can go from 0 to 5 years. I need to see something in writing in there that this is in there, is up to 5. You can't just say it's 5 years. You got to put something in there for us to turn around and make a decision on each circumstances, very, very clearly written up policy that we can do that.
But can I just say, these standards are going across in nationally, so it's a level playing field across England. So you're changing the standard by changing the wording. So everybody should be going to that specific standard. 5 years.
I am not disputing that, but can we have a look at it legally, please? The wording of 5 years or up to 5 years. What's the legal problem not following the standard if you say up to 5 years? There's no legality in it, but that gives us looking at case by case. You can make a decision, say, it's entirely up to the committee. Then you can say, yeah, we're going up to 2 years. No, this was really bad. We're going 3 years, or we're going maximum 5 years. So everybody clearly understands it, and there's a guideline for elected members, for the people in this committee, and everybody understands that when we are making the decision, I'm not asking to change the guideline to up 5 years. If you want to put it up to 10 years, I don't have a problem with that, because we got to send the clear messages out. But I think there's got to be something legally in there that we are not challenged. I mean, because it's very easily to be challenged, and that's only my concern is as elected member.
Mahfouz, can I just say that they can challenge anyhow, whatever decision we make, they have the right to appeal to the court and they can go there. Yeah, but the standards have come from the national. Yeah. So if we change the standards, then we've got a problem.
If we change the standards, we can be challenged.
Exactly. Yeah. And also, if you're saying up to 5 years, it's almost like you're giving them a sliding scale, and then you're going to have to look at, well, what does count for 5 years? You know, so really, if you have a set policy where it's 5 years, then that is your starting point. Yeah, and then you look at any aggravating, mitigating factors, and then that could take you down, or you can depart from the policy. But I think it has to be very clear that it's 5 years.
Thank you. I've got Jim wanted to come back.
I'm not understanding, because the reason I'm not understanding, if you have a very clear policy 5 years, yeah, what does it tell me as an elected member? Yes, Mr. Councillor Hussain, but looking at circumstances, are you going to issue a separate guidelines for this committee for elected members?
Well, for every case, it would be dealt with on a case-by-case basis anyway. So for each case, you'd say, we're looking at the guidelines, and if you want to depart from it, you can take this, this, and this into consideration.
No problem. Will I get that in writing?
In every panel, you would, for every report, yeah. Right. And there'd be a legal advisor anyway who would tell you that.
So when I sit on any of the panels, listening to any of the cases, I will get that in writing, saying that I can do that. Is that clear from legal side?
You will be, the circumstances of each case, each panel hearing will be detailed in the report, and then your options will be explained to you as part of the process, decision-making process. So you'll be given that guidance during the panel.
Right. So you're only going to be given guidance, but you won't be telling me how many years that will be after the discussion.
We wouldn't be allowed to tell you that, but we'd say these are the guidelines. If you want to depart from the policy, this is what you need to be looking at.
So we'll have a clear guideline saying that we can come off 5 years and follow whatever guidelines we need to follow. Long as we get that writing in every appeal, that'll be fine when it comes to mobile or any of other appeals. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Jim?
I think the guidelines are clear, to be fair. I think we have to remember that we're actually dealing with professional drivers who are held to a higher standard. Therefore, you know, they are treated differently to regular road users. I'm a PSV holder, exactly the same as a taxi licence holder. If we are caught with a mobile phone, we go in front of the traffic commissioner, we have our licence revoked, and we also lose our jobs at the same time. So, you know, this isn't any different to anybody else. They are classed as professional drivers. It's their job, and they should be held to a higher standard. So I think for me, the guidelines are clear.
Thank you. Miriam?
I was just going to comment very similar to what Jim said. I mean, they would have had a conviction anyway for using the handheld device. It's not a case of points, is it? So that's why I think it is the 5 years. That's how I'm reading it anyway.
Thank you. Denise?
Yeah, I think, again, Jim made it quite clear, but what Councillor is saying isn't taken on board is that if we move the goalpost, which Donna made quite clear that this is a national guidance to adopt, if we move the goalpost, then we're under scrutiny. But we will probably be frowned upon as well, because we'd be asked for what reason we'd want to move that goalpost when it's a national policy. We take the national policy, and as each committee does, we give people a fair chance to explain the conditions on that day, and that's when the decision's made. So I'm absolutely 100% that we adopt the policy and stick to the correct guidelines. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Denise. Denise, Andrews. Denise Andrews, did you want to come in?
Yeah, it's just to echo really what Donna was saying, and just to bring us back to why these guidelines have been pulled together, and the request from government that each authority adopt them as their policy. And it's after many years of people reviewing, and we had the Casey review into, you know, the terrible problems that have happened in some areas of the country, and the whole idea behind them is that if every licensing authority adopts the same standards, then we should hopefully avoid any of those terrible things happening again in the future. And obviously they've looked quite widely at taxi licensing, and this is what a panel have said we ought to be doing. So we would really need to have a good reason to depart from adopting these as our policy. That's all I wanted to say, really, just to bring us back to why are we doing this? Why are government asking us to do this?
Okay, thank you very much. I think we had a good debate. I think we need to move.
Chair, I've had my hand up for a long time.
Sorry, Brian, I
had my hands up before Mahfouz.
Oh, sorry. I thought I did give you a chance when you came into original. Okay, Brian, go on.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Just 2 points I'd like to make. The first one is, I don't think we can do this retrospectively because it's against natural justice. It's like me driving down the road last week at 30 miles an hour, and then suddenly we say, no, it's 20 miles an hour now, and I'm going to do you for that last week. That wouldn't be fair at all. So it must be for new cases, this. And secondly, I agree entirely with Councillor Casey. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Tassie?
Just clarification. I just want to be careful with the wording that's being used and what I'm listening to. So I just want clarification around it, because Donna, earlier said that this was whilst they were with paying passengers in the vehicle. So I just want clarity that is this only if they get caught with a mobile phone whilst on the job, or is this even if they're just driving privately?
No, the conviction for driving with a mobile is a conviction whichever.
Because you used that wording earlier, and that kind of offset me as to, you know.
I think that was more in the CCTV though, but yeah.
No, it was definitely with mobile.
Oh, sorry. No, there's no difference really. Obviously public safety is probably impacted a little bit more when there's passengers in, but.
I totally understand that. It's just, and that's why I picked up on it, because you said that maybe you didn't realise you did, but you did, and that's why I wanted clarity on that. And two, if you move away from the mobile phone thing, this 5-year thing, when I first came on, we didn't have a lot of clarity as to what the boundaries were for when we would grant somebody a licence, whether we were going to revoke it, whether we were going to put them on probation for 3 months or review it in 3 months. And then I think it was about 2017 or 18, I personally felt that we got a lot of guidance around that. And that helped us a lot in the way of feeling that whatever decision we were taking was within some sort of law, within some sort of guidance. And if somebody was to ask a question, we could justify that. So although I understand what Mahfouz is saying, that it's got to be 5-year blanket, which sometimes might be harsh, or are we open to then have a look at each case by case? But then would we have actually a load of columns underneath that to help us determine what they would fall into and how far we can push that boundary?
I would say the years and really are the minimum standard. So yes, you can depart from it, you can issue on each personal circumstance, but really it's a minimum standard. So you wouldn't keep bringing in years underneath it. It's either yes, you grant it, or no, you don't.
So for me, then that box below the 5 years doesn't exist then.
No,
because you do or you don't. And again, but on many occasions this evening, we've been saying, well, you can look at each case by case to grant under the 5 years. And that's what Mahfouz has been arguing about. And I think that's what he's trying to get to, that I want it clear to say, well, actually, I can deviate from them 5 years, and we can maybe give 2 years or 3 years or 4 years. But we're now saying, actually, no, it's 5 years or nothing.
Yes
You
or
know,
no?
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? No. Right. If that, if that's the case, then we'll leave it at that. The next agenda is part 2. Yeah, Donna?
Yeah, can I just say about the statutory one? Obviously, we're going to go out to consultation now with the trade.
Yeah.
So you just want their feelings on CC. Obviously, we'll feedback how they feel about the standards.
Yeah.
But are you, in principle, are you for CCTV or not?
Can I ask the committee that? What do you think about the CCTV?
Chair, I think we should try to go for CCTV because we have to protect the public and especially vulnerable people that may use the taxis. So I think we should aim for CCTV, but maybe say by a certain date so that it does give people chance to get the money together. I realise it's quite a lot of money in these circumstances, and therefore perhaps to say make it statutory by a certain date. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Anybody else?
No, I'm in favour. I think it's an inevitability that all vehicles will at some point be fitted with CCTV, and it'll certainly make the committee's job a lot easier.
Thank you.
I'm in favour.
Okay, thank you. Brian?
I'm in
favour
as well, Chair, yeah, I'm in favour, and it goes both ways. We're talking about the passengers, but it's also driver safety as well in today's world. So it's a two-way thing. So but again, I sympathise with the market out there at the moment. Trade will have been extremely difficult for our taxi provisions. So that I think there needs to be quite a generous timeline on when we expect them to be able to put that in.
Yeah.
Well, I personally think. Sorry,
Chair, John.
Sorry, John. Sorry, John. Go on.
I'm just concerned about the data protection and how that's controlled. I have no problem with the CTV. I do agree with colleagues. I think it's a good idea. Yeah. But like I say, it just concerns me, especially at the minute in time, with all the new legislation on the data protection and how that's done. That it is done by the council, but obviously that cost will need to be added to the license and put on, because I don't think that we could afford to take that on at some cost.
Okay, well, I feel at this moment of time, because of the corona, there's, like Denise said, the taxi drivers are really down. I think I would say we have to leave it at the moment for at least 6 months, and then consider it after 6 months, because at this moment of time, if you talk to any taxi driver, they're not really earning what they're supposed to be, and that life is really difficult. So my proposal is, yes, I agree, we need it, but at this moment of time, no, for at least for the next 6 months, because the things are not better, they're getting worse. You all know about it, and I feel that if we can start something at this time of the, then it's not really suitable. I don't think we're going to get positive answers, and I don't think many people will be happy. Of course, it's the cost, and then it's not the time. To me, I think we should give them another 6 months before we make any start of this CCTV camera. But I'll go with the majority, whatever the majority wants.
Chair, I was thinking somewhere around September.
Yeah.
When probably schools and everything are opening up. That would be my timeline.
Yeah. I go along with you, Lillian, in September, not now. Is that okay with everyone?
Chair, might I suggest that I do agree that there's got to be a delay to an expectation, but could we have some communications out to the drivers that this is something that we'll be aspiring to bring, and then they can account for that as the year goes ahead. Because, you know, what I don't want to do is then announce in September that we're looking at putting CCTV into vehicles and they come as a shock to them. It'd be nice to announce it and give them, you know, a long lead up so that, you know, we probably would get less challenged.
Thank you very much. That's a good idea, Denise. Yeah, Donna, can we do that?
Yeah, actually, to actually introduce something like CCTV would take a long time anyway. So we're probably looking at this time next year before we've got the CCTV policy in, the you know, all the information. So it's not something that will happen overnight. So
that's fine. Thank you.
I'm just conscious that you agree that it's a good system. So we will put that into the consultation.
Yeah, we agree.
Yes.
I'm sure everyone agrees with the CCTV, but
Sorry,
it's just
Chair,
the timing.
can I just make one point, please, if you don't mind? I don't know, it's dragged on for a while. My question is, do you know a lot of replacement vehicles for the private hire vehicles when they're involved in accidents? How would we implement it in them vehicles? Because those vehicles might not necessarily have CCTV in. So that I'm just saying, I don't need the answer now. I'm just saying it's something to consider going forward to work around.
Yeah, we'll think about that one. Yeah.
Okay.
Are we okay? Are we all right? Shall we move on to part 2 now? Or have you got anything else to? Because
sorry, can I just really like to be clear that I understand where we're at in the process. Obviously, whenever we do a consultation with trade, it does take several months for the consultant, because we have to give at least 8 weeks for a consultation, and then we will need to bring the results of the consultation back to a committee, and then at some point in the future we will then amend the policy and it'll become operative. So can I just be clear, do you want us to go into consultation now around these proposals to change policy to come in maybe in 12 months time, or are you wanting us to wait to start the consultation in September when you think the trade may be more buoyant? I'm not convinced that I'm clear about that.
We should start in September the consultation, not now.
So consultation in September.
Yeah.
I mean, any policy changes, as elected members, we all understand you have to carry out these procedures and the processes are followed before we make any decision. So, as far as I'm concerned, I'm not making no decisions until the consultations are cleared and the recommendations brought back to committee, and that is the procedure of the council. Okay.
Thank you. So, Denise, what I feel, I'll make it clear. I think we are saying that we're going to start the process in September, not now. Like Denise said, we can make them aware of that. We are going to start this, but in September.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to be absolutely clear about that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Right. Can we move on to the next agenda, please?
I think, do we need to invite Mr. Madassa?
Chair, we have to actually leave this meeting and move into the Teams meeting, which you all had an invite to this afternoon, because it isn't a live meeting, that one. It's just an internal meeting because it's not open to the public.
All right. So we have to leave that.
Yeah, and go into your calendar and you'll find the invite to the Teams meeting. If you just click on that and join.
So, sorry, Paul, say that again.
If everybody leaves this meeting now and they join in the Teams meeting that was sent out today, that will be a private meeting and not open to the public because it's part 2.
Right, so can we consider agenda number 6?
Yeah, because there's another meeting.
Paul, can we do the number 6 and then the other councillors can go and then we can start this, or shall we have to? They need to come back.
Well, item 6 is in part 2.
Is that in part 2 as well?
Yeah, the proceedings of the subcommittees are in part 2 according to the agenda.
So then this meeting is finished.
Yeah, the public meeting is finished and we'll reconvene in part 2.
Okay, so we're just going to be 3 panel members now, is it?
No, it's all members of the committee to approve these.
All right. Okay then, that's fine. Thank you. Thank you, Paul. Right. Are you all there? Hello?